Hi, this year I get to spend Christmas and New Year in Serbia. I flew with Air Serbia Airlines and I had a very unusual occurrence. They weighed my hand luggage. Now I've talked about flying with your camera equipment before, and it's very rare they actually weigh your hand luggage. But this was one of those occasions, and it was 12 kilo and their limit is 8 kilo. And there was no way she wasn't going to let me on the flight with that camera bag, no matter how much I pleaded it was expensive camera equipment. So I've got my backup plan in place. And my backup plan is my photographer's waistcoat, very large pockets and all empty. So all I had to do was put that camera bag onto the floor. I took out 3 camera bodies, 1 short lens and my laptop, and I thought that's more or less 4 kilos, that should be okay. Put it back on the scales, and she didn't do it properly because she left the suitcase on the scales. I put my camera bag on top of the suitcase, then she deducted the weight of the suitcase and she said it was still 10 kilos. Now, I would have argued that we'd have had to have weighed it independently by itself, but I didn't have to because she let it go at 10 kilo, let me take it on. But having this photographer's waistcoat, when these rare occurrences do happen, it's very reassuring you've got a solution. And I've never had them query the fact that when I've stuffed my pockets full of heavy stuff, they do let you on.
For many years, my favourite airlines to travel with are EasyJet and British Airways because they have no weight limit on your hand luggage. If it's the right physical size, they'll let you on.
So now we're going to try and find the first subject I'm looking for, which is long-eared owls. Finding them couldn't be easier. The website I was following said go to the main square, go to the rear of the Orthodox church, which is there, and between the church and the restaurant, there's long-eared owls. And there's lots of them.
We're in the town of Kikinda, and it's known as the long-eared owl capital of the world. There can be 700 or even 800 birds in the town centre roosting.
The only problem is they are very high up. I've been to a town in Hungary where there was a lot of long-eared owls in the middle of the town, but they were much lower down than these are.
There also tends to be lots of twigs and branches in the way, so you've got to keep adjusting your position to try and find a clean shot. And the owls are not just in the town centre, but walk along any of the streets radiating outwards and you'll find more owls. This is a major tourist attraction.
Well, I've waited to dusk. The sun is just setting now behind the church. There's no sign of activity. They're not lifting their heads up and opening their eyes. So the photography has been pretty poor, but it's time to go back and find my hotel room and warm up a bit. It's the following morning now. I got up very early, so I was walking around the square in the dark looking for any new ones that were low down, and several of them much lower down. Whether what happens is during the course of the day the ones that are low down gradually get disturbed, I don't know, but this one is very low down and quite open, so I can take pictures. Just getting it to open its eyes is the next problem.
They don't do very much, they just sit there. I'd be quite happy if it just turned its head, opened its eyes and looked at me. That's all I want, but they just sit there for hour after hour with their eyes closed. During the course of that second session, I found several of them fairly low down and out in the open. Just not very interesting. That one's got its eyes open, slightly better. Now you could try squeaking your lips at them, making little mouse-like sounds to try and get them to look at you, but you'd be wasting your time. The streets are very noisy, there's a lot of people there. They're talking in loud voices, and because it's New Year, firecrackers are going off. Well, he did move his head, I suppose, but it's not quite what I wanted. But the answer, as always with wildlife photography, is just to keep trying. And on my third visit, as soon as I saw this cluster of elves, I thought from the other side of these trees they will be quite open. And they were, and reasonably low down. Not only that, but the bird that is fairly central there had its eyes open most of the time and was looking at me as I was walking around. Now, he's a bit too close to the birds on the left to get a clean shot. I can do it vertically, I can avoid the other birds, but not landscape. Nevertheless, this was my best opportunity. All of the stills pictures and video are taken with the OM1 Mark II. I did have the Lumix camera with me, but it didn't get used at any point. It wasn't the most prolific trip I've ever been on. The only thing you have to think about here is exposure, because if you just point the camera and shoot at automatic, the pictures will be too dark because the sky is too bright behind them, so you haven't to overexpose. It was about 1.7 stops overexposure.
I've driven about 90 minutes from where the long-eared owls are to a place called Lake Palic, and I know there's 2 bird hides here, so I sat in the car watching this first one for about 10 minutes through the binoculars, quite a distance away, and it seemed to me there was grey heron, great white egret, great cormorant, pygmy cormorant and marsh harrier all flew right in front of this hide, very, very close. Now from a distance that can distort things, but they did seem to be close. So I've just walked across. I'm going to have a go in this hide. I'm not a great fan of hides on nature reserves because they very rarely get you close enough to the birds, but maybe this is another exception. But this situation is perfect for bird in flight photography. I'm in a slightly elevated tower hide. The sun is directly behind me. It's a low winter sun. There's not a cloud in the sky. It's a blue sky. Everything is absolutely perfect, and the birds are following the shoreline, so they're going past me left and right. There's hardly any wind blowing to affect them at all. And something I've said repeatedly is I make good use of those custom settings on the OM1 camera. So I want to do birds in flight, I just have to put the camera to C1, and that's where all my settings are saved as C1. I don't have to stop and think about settings. When I'm doing the long-eared owls, it's C2 because that's just a static bird, and if I want pro capture I turn it to C3. Modern cameras are so complicated, and without being able to save these presets, I don't think I could remember how to use a camera. Now, unfortunately, this hide is open, so there's no sides on it, no back on it. It's just a front and a roof. Keeps the rain off you, but it does mean the birds can see you. But in 30 minutes, all 5 of those species came in front of me, but the marsh harrier, and I could see it coming. It's coming from that direction, and as it came round the last trees, it saw me in the hide and it veered off. If there were sides on the hide, if it was dark in here, he wouldn't have seen me at all. But it is good. I am close to these birds, and it's possibly the first time I've photographed pygmy cormorant in flight, I would imagine. I can't remember doing them in flight before. I'd have to check when I get home.
There was no shortage of birds. These are mostly pygmy cormorants. This is the great cormorant, the one we get in the UK. I'm shooting at 50 frames per second, so you get every wing position. And I really want the wings either fully up or fully down, and not just level. They don't look so good when they're level. This is the pygmy cormorant. So none of these pictures are cropped. This one is a bit on the small size for me. I'd rather it was bigger in the frame. But when the sun is low in the sky, it lights the birds up underneath the wings. The light is very important. Grey herons, and the great white egret. This bird was coming towards me, and just as it got into the right distance from me, it veered off to the side and gave me some nice wing positions. And all you need is 2,500ths of a second. That's normally enough to capture most birds in flight. And here's the marsh harrier, and it just got to this position, and this is where it saw me, and it started to veer off to its right hand side, but the light was catching it underneath, and so the next frame was probably the best one, the wings fully extended. The rest of the time in Serbia wasn't very productive. There were some very foggy days. You can see it's foggy in the distance here, but some lovely hoarfrosts as well. And occasionally on the side of the road you'd come across buzzards or kestrels sitting in these bushes covered in ice. This is the common buzzard and then the kestrel. Thanks for watching.